Jeez. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but apparently somebody doesn't like the way you do things. Or your skills have declined in recent years. Maybe. But my housekeeping shouldn't be an issue here. If people just tried to work with Ava, if people tried to work with me out the first time, none of this would have happened. Or would be happening right now. Have a majority of things moved, though I'm not very happy with how it's turned out so far. But this is what the lease violation didn't cover, or didn't consider. So thank you, Ava, for cleaning this place up. What the fuck? Not again. Huh. Somebody's gotta get this place straight. God dang it. I've rearranged some goddamn furniture, Caprice and Breeanna. And I just refuse to be boxed in by a fucked up system that thinks my semi-disabled self is nothing more than a fucking little housekeeping problem.
The goddamn nerve of that landlord. They're pushing us to the edge.
Breeanna, you know god dang well that I did my best here.
You shouldn't have to earn any more goddamn lease violations. I'm taking this to that bitch Sasha, once and for all. I'm gonna give her a piece of my mind, a piece of my vagina, and kick her ass. That's after I hit Ava a lot. She's gonna regret ever crossing us.
A few moments later.
I have to fix this. Ava deserves respect, protection, and goddamn it, well, a motherfucking safe place. Not another goddamn fucking lease violation haunting her life.
So, oh my god, you didn't go over there and kill Sasha and Leilani and then go get food from Save-A-Lot, did ya?
No, I bought the groceries first.
Huh. Well, I thought you were gonna go over there and scare the living shit out of them, or give a piece of your vagina. But either way, I do know it sounded very critically serious, Breeanna.
Well, it started out that way.
What'd she say?
Well, if I remember correctly, oh. The fucking hurt. Stop it, you cocksucking bitch. Something along those lines. We're not backing down this time. Not now, not ever.
Hi Ava, Breeanna, can we come in?
Well, that all depends on what you're here for.
Let him in, honey.
Breeanna, we have another warrant for your arrest.
I heard the call come in on the radio, so I just told dispatch that I'd take it.
There is a second assault and battery complaint filed against you, but it's from a different property manager. Sorry Ava, but I have to take Breeanna into custody once again.
Whoa, easy, officer. Breeanna didn't do anything wrong. She was going to the leasing office and straighten this lease violation I had, which is proven to be false.
Ava, this is about me. It's not about anybody else. Let's leave it at that.
Ava, what you need to do is head to the station as quick as you can with the bail. It's going to be about $500.
We'll start processing Breeanna as soon as we can. I'm sorry, Mrs. Zinn, but we gotta cuff you.
It's okay, cuff me again. It's justified. That bitch got what she deserved for what she did to Ava.
Well, can't she at least have a vegetarian corn dog? She hasn't had lunch yet.
This isn't related to the altercation at Preston Point. The incident occurred at your landlord's leasing office complex entirely. We have reports and evidence of another aggressive assault on your landlord by Breeanna Ava.
I can't fucking believe this. Not again.
We need your full statement, Ms. Zinn. We understand how difficult this is, but Breeanna's actions have placed you and the entire family in a very precarious situation.
What are we gonna do now?
We'll do our best to sort things out, but for now, you need to come with us to the station and give your full account of today's events. This isn't just about one incident, it's a pattern we can't ignore.
Moments later.
I received another lease violation this morning. A flimsy excuse for housekeeping issues. Somehow, Sasha Bowen, the property manager over at Waterloo Gardens, had the nerve and audacity to do this. I went through every corner of my home, inspecting it meticulously, and what I found was clear. This isn't just a simple mistake. It's basically a system designed to keep pushing me down, targeting me because I'm semi-disabled, because I exist on the fringes of what they consider acceptable. I did everything I could, but these continual violations, they're not basically errors, merely. These are deliberate acts, messages in their own right, and today, as I read the document, I knew this wasn't just about cleanliness. It was a statement meant to break me. And now with Breeanna in trouble again, I fear our struggles are about to snowball into something even worse like eviction or non-renewal of lease. Listen, I understand that Breeanna's actions, however extreme they might seem, are a desperate attempt to protect our dignity in a system that's stacked against us. But I'm sorry. I'm just sick and fucking tired of being pushed around like I'm nothing more than a goddamn nuisance. Because I've been in 4 abusive relationships and an abusive marriage. And I've been through 3 sexual assaults or rapes. I've been misgendered repeatedly, had knives pulled on me, guns drawn on me, the whole goddamn fucking 9 yards. Every one of those fucking experiences left their own mark. And today, this violation feels like another wedge driven between me and my sense of self.
Meanwhile,
Listen, Breeanna. I need you to understand something clearly. Although your actions were brutal, so brutal, in fact, that witness descriptions compared their impact to a goddamn gunshot, we are not charging you with homicide.
That's good. So, it's just assault and battery? You're saying I'm not facing a homicide charge?
That's exactly right. The forensic evidence and all the testimonials point to a severe case of assault and battery against Sasha Bohemi, not homicide. As serious as this shit is, it falls under that charge.
I acted out of pure rage and a need to protect. But I never wanted to kill. I thought,
I understand your intentions, Breeanna. But the law has to account for the nature of your actions. This assault and battery charge is severe and will carry significant consequences. You'll need quality legal representation immediately and to prepare for what comes next in court.
fuck. And, so, it is. I'll answer for what I did. Son of a bitch, I'd do it 100 times if I had to.
Remember this. While your actions might have resembled something far more lethal, the charge remains assault and battery. This is how the incident will be handled. Now, we'll proceed with the necessary formalities. So, Breeanna, you're telling me that your transgender wife Ava's chronic fatigue, along with her debilitating knee and back issues, left her unable to maintain the apartment to the standards these assholes demand.
Yes, detective. I know it sounds like no one gives a flying fucking shit over here, but you have to understand, Ava battles these conditions every motherfucking day. She's exhausted, in constant pain, and when those property managers see her weakness, they pounce without a shred of goddamn compassion. I just couldn't stand by and watch her be humiliated or, worse, trampled on.
But does that justify you hitting Sasha Bohemi with your fucking fist? There were legal ways to address your complaints regarding Ava's rights. Your actions was not one of them, madame.
I tried every fucking thing, detective. The goddamn talks, the endless complaints, even silent pleas, nothing fucking worked. They only see Ava's disability as a goddamn excuse for fucking incompetence. They pile shit on her with trumped up lease violations and treat her like invisible shit. In that motherfucking moment, I wasn't going to let those assholes trample over her goddamn dignity.
I understand your frustration, Mrs. Zinn, but defending someone's disability does not give you the right to unleash violence of this magnitude. You're walking a dangerous line of deep shit here. The law expects us to use legal channels, not physical force, no matter how fucked up their system makes you feel.
What fucking choice did I have? What the fuck was I gonna do, detective? Every goddamn time Ava's blamed for her condition, her chronic fatigue, her busted back and knees, they pile shit on her. When that bitch Sasha disrespected Ava at Waterloo Gardens, it wasn't just an attack on me or Ava, it was an attack on everybody. I acted out of love, out of the necessity to protect her.
Breeanna, while your defense of Ava is noted, your actions cause serious harm to one individual, specifically Ava's landlord. You're lucky we're not pressing a homicide charge. The assault and battery charges, however, carry significant legal weight. I will note your context, but it doesn't erase what happened.
I never meant to mimic a goddamn gunshot. I never wanted to end someone's life. I only wanted to stop those pricks from treating Ava like shit, like she's less than fucking human because of her disability.
Intent aside, the evidence paints a picture of violent actions here, Breeanna. Your defense of Ava, tragic as it is, does not justify this level of ass-kicking, legally speaking. I understand you have legal counsel, your stepson-in-law, Martin Becker, correct?
That's correct, Detective. Breeanna and I have been aware of these systemic failures for a long time. While I don't condone violence, I intend to present the full context in court, demonstrating that her actions, as extreme as they were, stemmed from a long history of injustice and neglect toward Ava's basic rights. We know violence is never ideal, but when legal avenues have been blocked again, time after time, desperation drives people to do awful things. We plan to work within the legal framework to expose these systemic issues, even if it means facing severe consequences today.
Listen, I know exactly what I did, and I'm ready to accept the fucking responsibility. My adopted stepdaughter, Ashli, she's a nurse, will pay the bail, but people need to understand that Ava's struggle isn't just personal, it's systemic. Her fatigue, her constant pain, it's fucking real, and it matters.
We'll take your explanation under advisement and move forward accordingly. For now, prepare yourself for the court process. We need to reconcile the facts with the law.
Ava, I got Breeanna's call. I'm here both as your son-in-law and as Breeanna's attorney.
Huh, Martin? Please tell me what we're up against now.
I represented Breeanna after the incident at Preston Point. You remember. She punched a property manager and got a $2,500 fine. Now, with the assault at Waterloo Gardens, the stakes have risen. I intend to represent her again, but we must understand that repeating these actions only invites harsher scrutiny. I know Breeanna's outbursts come from her desperate need to protect you, Ava, with your chronic fatigue, that aching knee, and debilitating back issues. The property managers exploit your vulnerabilities as excuses to harass you. Yet violent retaliation will only worsen our situation. We need to build a defense that shows her intent wasn't to cause irreparable harm, but was born of a desperate need to defend your good dignity.
So, what does this mean for Breeanna? More fines, or something worse?
We're going to do everything we can to mitigate the consequences. Yes, Breeanna will likely face severe penalties if her actions are seen as a repeated pattern. But my job is to ensure it understands the full context. Ava's discrimination isn't just personal hardship. It's a systemic failure. We need to document every instance. I'm here to fight this battle in court, but I need all of you to stand strong. Every document, every testimony will help us expose the bigger picture.
What does this mean? Will Breeanna have to go back to jail?
I can't promise a flawless outcome, Kenny, but I promise I'll work tirelessly for her, as I did last time. We managed a relatively light sentence at Preston Point, just a fine. Now we must try to prevent further escalation. We begin by ensuring that Ava's struggles aren't seen as weaknesses, but as the real reasons behind these actions.
Thank you, Martin. I trust you with our family's future. I only want us to be safe and well respected.
Grandpa, we're not gonna let them get away with treating you like you're less than human. We all stand with you.
That's right. We're gonna fight this, together. Every single goddamn one of us.
That was uncalled for.
Sorry, Dad and Grandpa.
Grandpa, we know how much you've suffered. Mommy told me everything. We're here, and we won't let anyone bully you anymore.
We'll make sure everyone hears our story. They can't keep us down forever.
Daddy, I'm ready to help too. I won't let anyone take our grandpa's light away.
We're setting up a meeting with legal counsel, documenting every incident, and preparing our case. Our immediate priority is everyone's well-being, and will ensure our message is heard loud and clear. Remember, family matters come first, even when the law seems to be against us.
All right, let's do this. We stand together, now and always.
Several days later.
All rise. This case is now in session. The State of Indiana versus Breeanna Renee Zinn. Prosecution, you may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you will hear evidence regarding a series of violent actions taken by Mrs. Breeanna Zinn against a property manager at Waterloo Gardens, Sasha Bohemi. My colleagues and I stand before you not to question anyone's right to protect their loved ones, but to emphasize that the law does not allow one to take justice into their own hands, especially when the actions cross the threshold into severe assault and battery. You have heard that Mrs. Zinn was previously involved in an incident at Preston Point, a case in which she was found guilty of disorderly conduct and fined $2,500 for punching a property manager. Yet here we are, facing new charges arising from an equally violent episode at Waterloo Gardens. Witnesses described her blows with shock, comparing the force to that of a firearm discharge. This isn't mere hyperbole. It is the essence of the allegations against her. Some may try to argue that Breeanna Zinn acted out of a desperate need to defend her transgendered wife, Ava, a person beleaguered by chronic fatigue syndrome and debilitating knee and back problems. We do not dispute that Ava's suffering is real or that discrimination against the disabled is a matter of grave concern. However, no personal hardship or systemic malaise permits the use of disproportionate, violent force against another individual. This court must decide whether Mrs. Zinn's actions represent acceptable self-defense or a deliberate escalation into violence that the law cannot tolerate. The state of Indiana will present evidence showing that the physical assault on Sasha Bohemi was not a spontaneous outburst of lawful protection. It was a calculated, dangerous act that endangers public safety. We ask that you consider the facts, the testimony, and the undeniable evidence of repeated violent behavior. Let it be known that while mitigating circumstances concerning Ava's disability may be brought forward by the defense, they do not provide a legal justification for what occurred at Waterloo Gardens. Mrs. Breeanna Zinn must be held accountable for her actions under the full weight of Indiana law. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in my opening statement, I ask you to look beyond the immediate acts of violence and consider the context in which they occurred. Yes, my client, the defendant, Mrs. Breeanna Zinn, did engage in an altercation. However, her actions were not those of a cold-blooded aggressor, but of a de facto guardian pushed to the edge by a system that continually fails to protect the most vulnerable among us. My client acted out of an overwhelming need to shield her loved one, a trans woman you all know and love, none other than Ava Zinn. She's in this courtroom. What you see may be a typical transgender female. Ava Zinn is also my father-in-law, who has suffered constant humiliation and systemic neglect due to her chronic fatigue syndrome and debilitating physical conditions. When property managers exploit Ms. Zinn's weakness, they do more than violate regulations. They strip away her dignity and that of our entire family. Understand that Mrs. Zinn has a history. She has been penalized before. A $2,500 fine at Preston Point, just nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Today we are here not to excuse violence, but to reveal that violent retaliation is born from desperation when legal avenues have continually failed. I will demonstrate that what might seem to be excessive force was driven by love and a potent imperative to defend human dignity. The evidence we shall present shows a pattern of injustice, a pattern that led my client to act in a way that, while regrettable, was conditioned by systemic failures. I ask you to keep an open mind as you weigh not only the evidence of the assault, but the immense pressure and the numerous injustices that drove my client to this point. In a society where the disabled face relentless marginalization, is it not conceivable that a moment of overwhelming despair might lead someone to act in defense of their family's honor? At the end of this day, we are not just deciding on a single incident of assault. We are examining whether a system that disregards basic human dignity can itself bear any responsibility for the desperate actions it provokes. I trust that when you consider all the evidence, you will see that while no act of violence is ever ideal, the context here demands a fair, humane evaluation.
Soon after.
Good morning, Ms. Boheme. Please describe for the court what transpired on the day of the incident.
On that day, everything was normal until Mrs. Breeanna Zinn suddenly stormed into my office. I wasn't even aware my tenant was married until she was right in my face. Without warning, she launched into a tirade, shouting, "You fucking twatty bitch!" That phrase cut as sharply as the blow that was soon to follow.
And then, what did you witness next?
In one swift motion, Breeanna lunged at me. Her punch hit my face with a force I can only compare to the recoil of a firearm. I was staggered, there was a shock, followed by overwhelming pain. I had no prior conflict or warning. I was simply doing my job.
Ms. Boheme, would you describe this assault as self-defense?
Not in the slightest. There was no threat to my safety that I recall. I was only doing my job. The attack was completely unprovoked and excessively brutal.
Is this the first instance of such behavior from Mrs. Zinn?
No, Your Honor. I must note that there was an earlier incident at Preston Point involving Mrs. Zinn. I wasn't even there. Every case is unique, but the event at Waterloo Gardens was markedly more severe. The evidence, the testimony, video footage, and photos confirms that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Objection, Your Honor. The reference to the Preston Point incident is irrelevant and prejudicial. It is being introduced solely to suggest a pattern of behavior, rather than to address the facts of today's case.
Mr. Becker, please remain seated. Counsel, refrain from referencing unrelated incidents unless directly pertinent to this case. Objection sustained. The reference to the Preston Point incident is stricken from the record, and the jury is instructed to disregard any mention of that matter.
Very well. Ms. Boheme, please continue with your testimony regarding the assault at Waterloo Gardens.
At Waterloo Gardens, the assault was even more overwhelming. Mrs. Zinn burst in, and I saw her clenched fists before the devastating impact landed squarely on my face. I felt an electrical shock, as if a firearm had discharged, before the pain consumed me completely. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that justified such an outburst. I was simply performing my regular duties.
Let me be clear. This was not an act of self-defense, but a violent, aggressive assault that endangered personal safety and violated public trust.
I stand before you as a witness to that horrific day. I only ask that you consider the facts as they truly unfolded at Waterloo Gardens, without any influence from unrelated past events.
Ms. Boheme, can you please explain to the court the document you are holding?
This is a notice of lease violation issued to Ava Neves, the legal name of Ava Zinn, residing at 36 Cheviot Drive in Fort Wayne. It was dated June 2nd, 2025, and it cites housekeeping as the specific violation. According to the lease agreement, tenants are required to maintain a clean living space. In this instance, Meridian Apartments received reports, verified by pest control and maintenance, indicating that the conditions in Ms. Ava Zinn's apartment were unsanitary. There was documented evidence of cat feces on the floor.
To clarify, were these unsanitary conditions confirmed through an inspection?
Oh, our team scheduled an inspection on June 13th, 2025, to determine compliance with the cleaning standards. The findings, however, did not confirm the unsanitary conditions as reported by pest control.
Ms. Boheme, were there any previous complaints or violations against Ms. Ava Zinn that would suggest this incident is part of a broader pattern?
I cannot comment on multiple violations. However, this notice, like similar ones issued in other cases, served as a formal warning. Failure to correct the issue could result in termination of the lease agreement.
And what was Mrs. Breeanna Zinn's response to this lease violation?
Instead of addressing the issue with Ms. Zinn, Mrs. Zinn stormed into my office. She began screaming obscenities, even calling me a fucking twatty bitch, before physically attacking me.
In your view, was Mrs. Zinn's reaction proportional to the lease violation?
The lease violation was simply a standard enforcement measure, a routine attempt to maintain community sanitation standards. It was not an attack on Ms. Ava Zinn or her disability. Mrs. Zinn's violent response had zero legal justification.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Becker, you may proceed with cross-examination.
Ms. Boheme, you testified that the lease violation you issued was standard procedure, that Ms. Ava Zinn, legally known as Ava Neves, was held responsible for maintaining a clean living space, correct?
Yes, the violation stemmed from documented sanitation concerns.
Would you say then that Ms. Ava Zinn had a history of struggling with property management before her time at Waterloo Gardens?
I'm not fully familiar with her previous housing situations.
Allow me to clarify for the court. This report details Ms. Zinn's troubled history. In 2022, following her move from Black Pine Flats to Gulfview Apartments, Ms. Ava Zinn suffered a severe back injury. Combined with her chronic fatigue and debilitating knee and condition, Ava Zinn was significantly impaired when it came to managing physically demanding tasks around the home. Moreover, the situation at Gulfview deteriorated rapidly as she was mistakenly placed on the second floor without an elevator or stairlift for 7 months until things were corrected after their property. Manager Tara Fike admitted to Ava Zinn of the mistake. She went to the first floor. The maintenance supervisor at Gulfview Apartments, Brandon Howell, was recently arrested on charges of sexual misconduct, basically rendering Ava's living conditions unsafe. Despite the best efforts of property manager Tara Fike, Ava Zinn ultimately opted not to renew her lease due to inadequate support and a persistently unsafe atmosphere.
Objection, Your Honor. This evidence pertains to events at Gulfview Apartments and is not directly related to the lease violation at Waterloo Gardens.
Mr. Becker, please ensure your points are directly relevant to today's case.
Your Honor, this information is directly relevant. Ms. Ava Zinn has repeatedly faced housing discrimination and grossly insufficient accommodations for her disabilities. The debacle at Gulfview Apartments is a prime example. When similar issues resurfaced here at Waterloo Gardens, Mrs. Breeanna Zinn reacted, not out of a desire for mindless violence, but as an impulsive, desperate response to a system that continually rejects Ms. Zinn's basic needs and dignity. So tell me, Ms. Boheme, when you made the decision to issue the lease violation, did you factor in Ms. Ava Zinn's documented physical limitations?
The rules apply equally to every tenant, regardless of personal circumstances.
Even those who are clearly incapable of adhering to them because of well-documented medical conditions.
It is not my responsibility to assess each tenant's health condition before enforcing community standards, sir.
And that's exactly why we're here today. That lack of consideration, this failure to accommodate basic human needs, pushed Mrs. Breeanna Zinn past her breaking point. Her reaction wasn't born out of a desire for cruelty. It was an outcry against a system that has repeatedly neglected Ava Zinn's well-being. As further support, I'm now presenting video evidence recorded from Ms. Ava Zinn's apartment, captured by her own security team. On May 29th, 2025, at exactly 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes before regular business hours, a pest control technician arrived unexpectedly. The footage begins with a visibly startled Ms. Zinn, scrambling to handle the situation. In a second clip taken 4 days before the issuance of the lease violation, on May 30th, 2025, we see her initiating an extensive 9-day rearrangement project in her living room. This footage clearly illustrates her desperate efforts to maintain dignity amid systemic neglect. The footage shows a frazzled, determined Ava methodically reorganizing her living room as she reacts to the unexpected arrival of pest control. Her face transitions from shock to a steely determination. Ms. Boheme, were you aware that on May 30th, 2025, Ms. Ava Zinn was already undertaking a major cleanup of her apartment?
I was not aware. I only based my violation on the condition reported during our pest control inspection.
So despite your testimony about persistent sanitation issues, you did not know that Ms. Ava Zinn had already begun to correct those issues on her own, issues that may have been misconstrued as neglect. Does this not suggest that the lease violation may have been, at least partially, a reaction to a misunderstanding of the situation?
My job is to enforce the lease agreements. I cannot account for every private effort made by tenants before a violation is issued.
Ms. Boheme, I must remind you that you are under oath. Your testimony must be completely truthful. Any attempt to mislead the court will result in serious consequences, including charges of perjury. I expect candor and precision in your statements.
I assure you, Your Honor, I have provided my testimony according to the facts as reported to me, without any intentional misrepresentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this evidence shows that Ms. Ava Zinn was actively striving to maintain her living space and preserve her dignity, even under systemic neglect. It is precisely this lack of acknowledgement for her efforts, this failure to consider her medical limitations, that drove Mrs. Breeanna Zinn to act as she did. This is not a case of random brutality. It is a desperate, reactive outcry against an unjust system.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. The court will now take a brief recess to review this additional evidence. We will reconvene shortly.
A few moments later.
I have reviewed the evidence presented a few moments ago today, particularly the video footage from Ms. Ava Zinn's apartment, and I must say I'm extremely troubled by certain omissions in your testimony.
Your Honor, I only testified based on the reports I received during our inspection.
Ms. Boheme, you are under oath. Your testimony stated that the conditions in Ms. Zinn's apartment were unsanitary. That is the basis for the lease violation. However, the video evidence clearly shows that on May 30th, 2025, Ms. Ava Zinn had already initiated a significant cleanup effort. You failed to mention this critical fact. In my view, your deliberate omission amounts to perjury by omission. You knowingly withheld evidence that contradicts your claims. This is a serious offense.
Your Honor, I swear I didn't intend to mislead anyone. I only reported what was brought to my attention by the pest control inspection.
Intent aside, Ms. Boheme, you are responsible for ensuring your testimony is complete and truthful. Your failure to include the fact that Ms. Zinn was actively mitigating the reported unsanitary conditions casts doubt on your entire account. I'm not here to make idle threats. Under penalty of perjury, I expect candor from every witness in this courtroom. I must warn you that if further evidence reveals additional omissions or falsehoods, you will be held fully accountable.
I understand, Your Honor. I will provide complete answers if you have any further questions.
Ms. Boheme, the evidence presented by Mr. Becker clearly contradicts key elements of your testimony. You are reminded that this court expects every witness to tell the truth. I caution you, any further contradictions may be deemed criminal contempt of court. Understood? Consider this your final warning, Ms. Boheme. The truth must prevail in this courtroom, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. You may be excused. Next witness, Mr. George Williamston. Mr. Williamston, you are here today to testify regarding Mrs. Breeanna Zinn's actions and your first-hand knowledge of the conditions affecting Ms. Ava Zinn. Please state your credentials for the court.
I have served as part of Ava Zinn's security team for many years, ensuring her safety in circumstances where discrimination, harassment, or plain negligence threaten her well-being. I've witnessed firsthand how property managers exploit her disabilities, chronic fatigue, debilitating back and knee conditions, to justify their abrasive treatment of her.
Mr. Williamston, you were present when the events surrounding the lease violation escalated. In your professional opinion, was Mrs. Breeanna Zinn justified in her actions?
I'm not here to justify violence. What happened at Waterloo Gardens was not an isolated incident, it was the culmination of a long history of targeted mistreatment against Ms. Ava Zinn. Mrs. Breeanna Zinn did not react at random, her actions were a desperate response to a system that has failed Ava again and again.
Are you saying that Ava was intentionally targeted by Waterloo Gardens management?
Just as at Golfview Apartments, where she was forced to endure an environment riddled with negligence, harassment, and outright threats, Ms. Zinn has been systematically mistreated.
Yet none of those details change the fact that Mrs. Zinn engaged in violent behavior, correct?
No, they don't change that fact. But they do explain why she reached her breaking point.
You may proceed with questioning, Mr. Becker.
Mr. Williamston, you testify that the lease violation at Waterloo Gardens was issued solely on the basis of documented sanitation concerns. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Now, based on your observations as part of Miss Ava Zinn's security team, can you describe how her physical limitations impacted her ability to meet those housekeeping standards?
Ava Zinn suffers from chronic fatigue and a debilitating back and knee condition. These issues make it extremely challenging for her to perform strenuous tasks, including regular cleaning and maintenance.
Would you say it is reasonable to expect someone in Ava's condition to meet the same physical standards as a fully able-bodied tenant?
It is difficult. While lease regulations set a clear standard, exceptions or leniency should certainly be considered, especially when a tenant's disability is well documented.
Earlier, we presented video footage showing that on May 29th, 2025, a pest control technician arrived at her apartment, and, more crucially, on May 30th, 2025, Ava was seen actively reorganizing her living room. Were you aware that she was already taking significant steps to remedy the situation before the lease violation was issued?
I was informed by Mark Yaspecki of her personal efforts prior to the routine inspection that eventually led to the violation. My report was based solely on the data available from the inspection conducted during the afternoon of June 13, 2025.
So to put it plainly, despite video evidence indicating that Ava was striving to correct the issues, the property management proceeded with the violation without factoring in her documented physical limitations or her corrective actions.
The enforcement of lease standards is my responsibility to Ava. I do not have access to every private measure a tenant undertakes before an inspection confirms or clears a violation.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you've heard from Mr. Williamston underscores a critical point. Ms. Ava Zinn was not willfully neglecting her housekeeping responsibilities. She was battling systemic obstacles and severe physical limitations. It is precisely this lack of accommodation that drove Mrs. Breeanna Zinn, acting as a desperate protector, over her breaking point. In a system where even documented medical conditions are disregarded when enforcing rules, it isn't surprising that a loved one, pushed to the limit by constant neglect and humiliation, would react in a manner that, though violent, was ultimately driven by desperation and love.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. The court will now take a short recess to allow the jury to reflect on the evidence presented. We will reconvene shortly to continue these proceedings.
Later.
Dr. Zinn, please state your credentials and describe your personal connection to the Zinn family.
I am Dr. Jenna Zinn, a licensed physician and veterinarian. I hold both MD and DVM degrees. I was also married to Tiffany Zinn, Ava's transgender daughter, until her untimely passing. My personal loss, along with my dual professional background, has given me a deep and nuanced understanding of how systemic failures can compound individual hardships. Just to be clear, I do not see Ms. Zinn as a regular patient. There is a perceived conflict of interest. That is why Ava consults with Dr. Nodi for her primary care and takes Caprice and Ella to Allen Veterinary Hospital and Humane Fort Wayne Clinic for their checkups.
Dr. Zinn, as both a medical expert and a longtime member of the Zinn family, how would you characterize Ms. Ava Zinn's ability to maintain household cleanliness given her diagnosed chronic fatigue syndrome, knee condition, and spinal injury?
Medically speaking, Ava's disabilities severely restrict her capacity for rigorous household upkeep. Chronic fatigue syndrome produces overwhelming, persistent exhaustion that limits physical activity. Her degenerative knee condition substantially diminishes her mobility, and her back injury, sustained after her move from Black Pine Flats to Gulfview Apartments, further impairs her ability to perform tasks that would be routine for an able-bodied person.
And yet, despite these significant limitations, Mrs. Breeanna Zinn responded with violent aggression upon receiving what was, in essence, a routine lease violation. Is that correct?
Yes, however, let me clarify, Breeanna did not simply snap without cause. For years, she has witnessed Ava being repeatedly subjected to housing discrimination. This lease violation wasn't merely another notice. It was a stark reminder that Ava's very real medical conditions are routinely ignored. In that context, Breeanna's reaction was driven by a cumulative frustration with a system that continually fails this family.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Dr. Zinn, or should I say Jenna, given your extensive medical expertise, would you say that our father-in-law, Ms. Ava Zinn's physical limitations make it medically near impossible for her to maintain the housekeeping standards demanded by Waterloo Gardens management?
Absolutely. It is medically near impossible for her to meet those rigid standards without extensive assistance. Her condition renders her incapable of performing many of the demanding tasks that are expected of a typical tenant.
And would you agree that chronic stress, such as being hit with an unwarranted lease violation, can exacerbate her symptoms and further diminish her ability to function normally?
Without a doubt. Chronic stress not only worsens fatigue but also severely impairs mobility and overall health. In Ava's case, that lease violation was far from a routine administrative matter. It actively aggravated her condition, undermining her well-being and accelerating a cascade of detrimental health effects.
Objection.
Ms. Boheme, your outburst is entirely unacceptable in this courtroom. You are expected to conduct yourself with respect and decorum. Disruptive behavior undermines the integrity of these proceedings. I'm now going to hold you in contempt of court for 10 days. Let me remind everyone here that this courtroom is no forum for disruptive behavior. If any further outbursts occur while Mrs. Zinn is on trial, I will not hesitate to hold the responsible parties in criminal contempt. This trial exists to uncover the truth and deliver justice. Order must be maintained. So leave. Anybody who sits there laughing or smirking with anyone should know that actions have consequences. Look at her. She's heading straight to the Allen County Jail. Anybody else want to go? You can go too. This is a court of law, and these are very serious matters. I understand many of you are upset because a tenant's beloved wife could be going to prison. But guess what? She's going to prison for the choices that she made. These people are here grieving, saddened, because a senseless act hurt their loved one. And yet some of you are acting as if it's a joke. Not in courtroom 202. Not today, and certainly not any other day. Ma'am, you are being taken into custody for criminal contempt. Your disruptive and disrespectful behavior has disrupted today's proceedings. You, ma'am, are being held in contempt and will spend 10 days in the Allen County Jail for direct criminal contempt. Anybody else want to go? Try it? Try it. Oh, my mouth? Well, thank you. Your mouth has got you up to 10 days. Now we shall resume testimony.
I want to evict Ava already.
Dr. Zinn, in your expert opinion, does the strict enforcement of housekeeping standards without due consideration for documented disabilities create an environment where a loved one's protective instincts are pushed to a dangerous extreme?
Yes, it does. When a system fails to accommodate legitimate medical conditions, it turns what should be routine administrative measures into catalysts for injustice and despair. Breeanna's reaction was not an isolated snap of temper. It was the tragic culmination of years of witnessing Ava's relentless suffering.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this trial is not about isolated acts of violence. It is about exposing a systemic failure that strips away dignity and disregards the genuine needs of individuals. Dr. Zinn's testimony clearly demonstrates that Ms. Ava Zinn was not willfully negligent. She was trapped in an unyielding cycle of discrimination and physical limitation. Breeanna's desperate outburst was a direct, if tragic, consequence of that relentless neglect.
Court will now take a brief recess to allow the jury to reflect on the evidence presented. We will reconvene shortly.
One humongous meal later.
Ms. Zinn, as both a medical professional and a valued member of this family, please explain, does your adopted father, Ava Zinn, possess the physical ability to maintain the cleanliness standards required by her lease?
Absolutely not. From a medical standpoint, Ms. Zinn's chronic fatigue syndrome, her degenerative knee condition, and her serious back injury render her incapable of performing the demanding physical labor that her lease requires. These conditions drastically limit her ability to keep up with such standards.
And yet, despite these clear limitations, it was Mrs. Breeanna Zinn who responded with violent aggression upon receiving the lease violation, correct?
It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it certainly explains it. For years, Breeanna witnessed our father suffer, repeatedly forced to endure Ava's struggles with daily tasks, and saw no one offer the necessary help. I recall those days vividly, even from the time when Ava was married to my mother, Angie Nieves. The relentless neglect and inability of the system to step in finally drove Breeanna to her breaking point.
So you're saying that Breeanna's reaction was an emotional response, a desperate protective outburst, rather than an act of random malice?
Correct. Breeanna was defending our father's dignity. She was not attacking arbitrarily. Her actions were born out of years of witnessing Ava's continuous mistreatment.
Ms. Zinn, would you agree that the property managers repeatedly failed Ava by not accommodating her well-documented medical conditions?
Absolutely. Ava's disabilities should have automatically triggered legal and compassionate accommodations rather than harsh penalties. Over time, this repeated neglect built a pressure that ultimately contributed to Breeanna's desperate outburst.
You may step down, Ms. Zinn. Ms. Zinn, please describe for the court how you would characterize the manner in which the property managers have handled your father's disabilities over the years.
They've treated it like an inconvenient burden, something they'd rather sweep under the rug. No matter how much evidence my father provided, they dismissed her challenges as laziness instead of recognizing her genuine disability. I've seen this disregard since I was young, dating back to when my father, then married to my mother, Angie Nieves, first faced these challenges. And sadly, the pattern persisted, worsening after my father began her gender transition to female. It's as if any sign of vulnerability automatically becomes a liability in their eyes.
Ms. Zinn, does frustration ever justify resorting to a physical assault?
Absolutely not. But sometimes when people refuse to listen, when systemic neglect silences all pleas for help, a voice is forced to rise in protest. I don't condone violence, I only understand that the emotional pressure can push someone to act actions that, while reprehensible, are born of desperation rather than malice.
Tabitha, as someone who has witnessed firsthand the impact of these repeated injustices, do you believe that your stepmother, Breeanna Zinn, acted out of a genuine need to protect your father, rather than committing a random act of violence?
Absolutely. Breeanna didn't snap for no damn reason. After years of witnessing injustice, watching my father be dismissed, dehumanized, and humiliated, Breeanna's reaction was a desperate plea for my father's dignity. It wasn't a random violent outburst. It was the tragic culmination of a lifetime of watching neglect and indifference.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you have heard from Tabitha is not merely the testimony of a distressed family member. It is a powerful articulation of a systemic failure. The cruel, inflexible enforcement of standards without acknowledging documented disabilities has left Ava Zinn defenseless. And when a loved one, pushed beyond the breaking point by relentless disregard, reaches a limit, even a single act of violence becomes an outcry born of deep frustration, not malice.
No further questions for the witness. Ms. Zinn, you may step down.
Mr. Zinn, did Breeanna Zinn, your stepmother, show any indication of planning to harm Ms. Boheme before the altercation occurred?
Look, Breeanna was fucking pissed as hell, pissed off, in fact, but she wasn't out there on some mission to attack random people. Everything she did was aimed solely at defending my father.
Yet ultimately, she did physically assault Ms. Boheme, correct?
Yes, she did. But it wasn't some cold, calculated act. It was defensive, born out of years of watching my father get treated like a goddamn afterthought. My father, Ava Zinn, was dismissed, dehumanized, treated like a pile of shit, and left to suffer. You can't blame a person for snapping when the system fucks her over time. I've seen that kind of neglect since I was a kid, back when my own mother, Kimberly Alvarez, abused my father relentlessly. That abuse, that constant degradation, drives you fucking over the edge.
Mr. Zinn, please watch your language in this courtroom.
Mr. Zinn, as Ava's son, would you agree that the system has routinely failed your father over the years?
Every single damn time. The failures are systemic, predictable, relentless, and out of her control. It's not her fault. It's the same system that's been screwing her over and over again.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you've heard from Mr. Kenneth Zinn isn't just the pain of a son watching his father suffer. It's a damning indictment of a system that routinely strips away human dignity. A father's struggles and the resulting outburst by Mrs. Breeanna Zinn are a direct consequence of systemic neglect. No further questions, Your Honor.
Later.
I know who you are. But Ms. Zinn, for the record, please describe the full extent of your medical condition.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was diagnosed with autism in 1986, a condition that runs in my family and has been passed down to my children and grandchildren. In 2023, I received an unofficial diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, an affliction I inherited from my late mother. On top of that, I suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome with atrial septic deficit and a debilitating knee condition. I've also sustained multiple serious back injuries since 2000. The major ones were in 2009 while working at Carry Services in Marion. Additional injuries in March 2017 and January 2018 following a scuffle with a case manager supervisor from Cornerstone Behavioral Health in Marion. Callous case coordinators who didn't give a damn. One of the factors that forced me to leave Marion for Fort Wayne in May 2018. And most recently, another severe injury during my move from Black Pine Flats to Golfie Apartments and nearly paralyzed me from the neck down. These aren't minor afflictions. They very damn well dictate every part of my daily fucking life. Sorry for my language here, Your Honor.
You claim these conditions leave you incapable of meeting the standard housekeeping expectations set by your lease?
Absolutely. 100%. I physically can't perform the demanding tasks they expect of me. Excuse my language, Your Honor, but bending down and being on my hands and knees has become extremely fucking difficult. Instead of the help and legal accommodations I need, I'm being penalized and treated like absolute shit for being semi-fucking disabled.
And did your wife, Breeanna, know about your conditions before she attacked Ms. Boheme?
Of course she did. Breeanna has witnessed the same, excuse my language once again, Your Honor, goddamn discrimination and neglect I've endured for years and years. And when she saw that same bullshit repeated at Waterloo Gardens, she finally had enough.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Zinn, watch your language. Your passion is understood, but please maintain the decorum expected within these walls.
And when Breeanna saw you being ignored by this indifferent system time and again, what exactly was her response?
Well, Breeanna did what the system did not and couldn't do for me. She stood up and fucking defended me with passion. Breeanna wasn't out to randomly hurt someone. She stood against this relentless injustice I've been through for years.
Ms. Zinn, you've told us what your conditions are. Now, in your own unmistakable words, would you say that these conditions make it medically impossible for you to maintain the rigorous housekeeping standard demanded not only by Waterloo Gardens, but by any housing complex?
Absolutely, I mean 100%. I cannot perform these goddamn tasks. Every single fucking day, I'm faced with these goddamn limitations. Even the easiest chores damn near break me. I'm not lazy. I'm physically incapable of meeting these ridiculous standards without proper assistance.
And would it be fair to say, then, that the very system that should be protecting you instead punishes you for conditions you simply can't control?
God dang right, Martin. This system treats my documented disabilities like an inconvenience, and more like a fucking burden. I'm left to suffer while they mindlessly tick boxes on some stupid fucked up form. No matter how much evidence I fucking provide, they still treat me like some motherfucking semi-disabled leech.
Again, Ms. Zinn, please watch your language. We expect professionalism in these proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you've heard from Ms. Zinn is not just raw personal pain. It's a damning indictment of a system that consistently strips away dignity. Her suffering is a direct result of systematic neglect, and Breeanna's desperate outburst was born from that relentless failure.
Soon after.
Mrs. Zinn, you have heard extensive testimony regarding your violent altercation with Ms. Boheme. Would you explain in your own words why you reacted the way you did?
Yeah, 'cause I was seriously fucking pissed off. I wasn't giving a flying fuck about any goddamn rules, or Trump-ass laws, or fucking restraint. I was thinking about the motherfucking bullshit my transgendered wife has endured for years. I've had it up to here watching Ava get treated like she's nothing but a piece of shit, disrespected and dismissed every fucking day by a system that doesn't give a damn.
And you now believe that justified physically attacking Ms. Boheme?
I don't give a shit about justification in some academic sense. None of you fucking assholes understand. I wasn't out to randomly hurt someone. I acted because I was sick and tired of watching Ava get rubbed the wrong goddamn way by a system that treats her like a fucking problem rather than a person. I lost control because I'd had enough of that relentless, goddamn injustice.
Mrs. Zinn, watch your language. I said we expect professional decorum in this courtroom.
Fine.
Mrs. Zinn, tell us about the exact moment you confronted Ms. Boheme. When you saw her, what went through your mind?
I looked at her and thought, I'm fucking done. I was sick of watching Ava get punished for shit she can't control. Being yelled at, demeaned, and treated like her disabilities are some personal failings. I was sick of all the shit. So, I did what needed to be done. I stood up and defended my transgendered wife.
And did you intend on seriously harming Ms. Boheme that day? Or was your motive purely a reaction against an unjust system?
No, I wasn't trying to put her in the fucking hospital or kill her, for God's sake. I lost control in a surge of anger, a surge fueled by years of watching the same goddamn fucking bullshit. Endless lease violations, ignored requests for accommodations, and a system that treats Ava like a fucking burden. I reacted because I had to. I was standing up for what I fucking believe in.
So, just to clarify, you acted solely out of uncontrolled anger?
Yes. Goddamn right I did. I didn't plan this shit ahead of time. I reacted because I'd watched that same goddamn injustice happen over and over again.
Mrs. Zinn, I said, watch your language. I will not ask you again. I will hold you in contempt for 10 days.
Understood, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just heard isn't merely raw personal pain. It's a damning indictment of a system that strips away dignity and punishes those who can't help it. Ava's suffering and Breeanna's desperate outburst are direct, inevitable consequences of systematic neglect. Every lease violation, every indifferent glance, every ignored plea, this is the result of a system that's broken and unforgiving.
I'm not proud of what happened, but believe me, I had no other alternative. For years, I watched Ava be humiliated and demeaned by property managers who treated her like she was less than human. Every single lease violation, every thinly veiled insult about her disability, it was relentless. I wasn't trying to become a violent person. I know assault is against the law, and sure, I regret that my anger took over, but when you continuously see your loved one, whether it's your own husband or in my case, my transgendered wife, Ava Zinn, dismissed as nothing more than a problem to be penalized rather than helped, your frustration builds until it becomes unbearable. Every damn time I saw my beautifully looking transgendered wife, Ava, receive a violation notice, like that one at Waterloo Gardens, I felt that sting all over again. They didn't just penalize her for housekeeping. They shamed her for being disabled. I've witnessed her struggle with chronic fatigue, her busted-ass knee, her crippling back injury, and even her battles with autism, diagnosed back in 1986, and with type 2 diabetes since 2023. That isn't just some medical record, it's her daily, damn reality. I acted out of desperate need, driven by the deep frustration of witnessing relentless systemic injustice. I lost control that day because I couldn't stand to watch her suffer any longer. I know my actions are on trial, and yes, I fully accept the consequences. But I ask you to understand that what drove me was the absolute failure of a system that refuses to accommodate the vulnerable. I do not ask for forgiveness for defending my family, but I do ask for understanding. Until this system changes, until those in power stop treating disabilities as expendable, people like me will be pushed to the brink.
One humongous meal later.
Court will now take a brief recess. However, before we reconvene the regular proceedings, I am ordering an emergency hearing, and let me be perfectly clear. Under no circumstances will this court allow an eviction to proceed. Ms. Boheme, you are here on an emergency basis. As you well know, Ms. Zinn has been subjected to systemic injustice. I hereby block and deny any and all efforts to evict her until this matter is fully reviewed.
Your Honor, I follow procedure. The lease violations were documented, and management had to enforce the rules. That said, I never intended.
Ms. Boheme, your explanations are not up for debate here. The evidence is clear. Your tenant, Ms. Ava Zinn, has documented disabilities, and the systemic neglect she's suffered render any eviction not only unjust, but unconscionable. I will not allow her to be dispossessed based on these so-called violations.
I understand, Your Honor. But I must say the rules exist, our protocols are in place. I did nothing more than enforce the lease as stipulated.
I brought this matter back today because, almost an hour or two ago, I held Ms. Boheme in direct criminal contempt due to her disrespectful and disruptive behavior during the testimony concerning the wife of her tenant, Breeanna Zinn, who is currently on trial for felony assault and battery against the same Ms. Boheme that stands before me at this moment. What Ms. Boheme did after her outburst when, instead of simply exiting, she remained in the gallery was utterly unacceptable. Based on what she said, she was removed not only for laughing at and mocking the family of the defendant during the witness testimony, but also for her blatant disregard when I declared that anyone unable to behave could leave. Ms. Boheme was escorted out by the bailiff and a security guard assigned to her tenant, but instead of departing quietly, she stormed out violently. She burst through the door and began yelling in the hallway, further disrupting the proceedings before my very eyes. I have an obligation to ensure that order is maintained in this courtroom. I could not allow or tolerate the gentleman, whose name I do not know, to continue sitting while laughing, for laughter, however harmless it may seem, was only a precursor to further disruption. It was only a matter of time before the defendant's family became enraged, and I could not risk any disturbance escalating into a fight during these proceedings. It was a continuation of a pattern of disrespect, so I held her in direct criminal contempt, as all of this occurred in my immediate view while court was in session. Really, my only job here, my only role is to ensure that things are done fairly, efficiently, and that every person involved is respected. You were present when the outburst began from the gallery. I recognize that Ms. Boheme committed perjury by omission after Mr. Becker presented evidence, and her emotional reaction during the testimony of the tenant's daughter-in-law, Dr. Jenna Zinn, only compounded the problem. But what you must understand is, as hard as this is for you as a property manager, imagine how it feels for your tenant, Ms. Ava Zinn, when she must live with these systemic failures. When your tenant has significant medical conditions that impair her ability to fulfill the obligations of your lease you made with Ms. Zinn, you must understand the gravity of the situation.
I understand that, Your Honor. I do feel for Ms. Zinn, too.
So I hope you learn a valuable lesson today. I hope this serves as a clear message to anyone doing business in the Allen County Courthouse in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or any court for that matter, that there is a proper way to conduct oneself with decency and order. You cannot come to court acting like a fool, a jackass, or a Jenny-ass. I know many watch television shows depicting make-believe courtrooms, which give a skewed sense of reality. Ms. Zinn even produces semi-fictional work on her series Caprice and Ella, and this is the exact series you are watching right now. But let it be known, Ms. Boheme, that this is real life. We simply cannot have people behaving in such a manner. It cannot be tolerated. I will now reiterate, Ms. Boheme, you are being taken into custody for criminal contempt. Your disruptive behavior, which occurred openly before this court during session, will result in 8 hours in the Allen County Jail. Really, my only job is to ensure fairness, efficiency, and respect throughout these proceedings.
Understood, Your Honor.
Court will now take a short recess to allow the jury to reflect on this emergency ruling, along with the evidence presented today. We will reconvene shortly to continue these proceedings.
1 hour later.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, assault isn't a gray area. On the morning of June 2nd, 2025, at Waterloo Gardens Apartments here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Breeanna Zinn stormed into an office, hurled a stream of profanity, and struck Sasha Boheme with such force that witnesses compared it to a gunshot. You saw the photos. You heard Ms. Boheme's terrified testimony. Yes, Ava Zinn lives with serious disabilities, and yes, this family is frustrated beyond words. But every tenant, disabled or not, must still abide by basic health codes. If Mrs. Zinn had believed that management was breaking the law, there were legal remedies available. File a HUD complaint, hire counsel, call the press. Instead, she chose violence again and again. Cary Court Apartments in Marion, Black Pine Flats, Gulfview Apartments, Preston Point at the Inverness, Waterloo Gardens. This isn't a random incident, this is a pattern. The law cannot excuse bodily harm simply because your anger feels righteous. One simple question governs this case. Did Breeanna Zinn intentionally batter Sasha Boheme? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is a resounding yes. Therefore, the only just verdict is guilty. End this with that guilty verdict.
You've seen the bruises and heard the cries, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Now remember what caused them. For nearly 15 years, and during my 4-year marriage to Ava's late eldest daughter, Samantha Jane Zinn, I've watched this family navigate the housing minefield as if playing Minecraft with lives instead of blocks. We're talking about my father-in-law, Ava Zinn, diagnosed autistic in 1986, burdened with chronic fatigue, crippling knee damage, severe spinal injuries, and adult-onset diabetes since 2023. She asks for nothing extraordinary, just the reasonable accommodations that federal law guarantees. And what does Ava Zinn get in return? Lease violations slapped on her for something as mundane as cat litter, violations issued under her legal name by managers who snicker as she limps past, dismissing her with cold indifference. Waterloo Gardens Apartments was merely the boiling point of a pressure cooker that's been building for years. When Sasha Boheme waved that violation in Breeanna's face, it wasn't just about housekeeping. It was a loud, defiant message. Your wife's disability is nothing more than an inconvenience. Breeanna Zinn reacted imperfectly, impulsively, and with undeniable humanity, as a desperate act of self-defense for the trans woman she loves. Yes, Breeanna Zinn struck Miss Boheme, and yes, she must accept consequences, but the law demands you weigh intent, context, and proportionality. This wasn't premeditated malice. It was a momentary, desperate eruption fueled by years of systemic neglect. I urge you, do not brand Breeanna Renee Zinn a violent criminal. If necessary, consider a lesser misdemeanor, but do not let a broken system that failed Ava now crush Breeanna as well. Indiana juries can see nuance. They can hear pain, and they can deliver justice that is tempered with humanity. Find Breeanna not guilty of felony battery, if not, at least reduce the charge to a lesser offense. Recognize that punishment without compassion perpetuates the very harm we're here to rectify.
Jury, you have heard exhaustive testimony from both sides. Deliberate thoughtfully. It is your duty to decide whether this case proves that Breeanna Zinn intentionally battered Ms. Boheme, or whether her actions were the inevitable outburst of a system that continually fails a vulnerable family. Remember, justice must be tempered with humanity.
2 hours later.
Will the defendant please rise?
On the charge of count 1 of felony assault, we find the defendant, Breeanna Renee Zinn, not guilty. On the charge of count 2 of felony assault with battery, we find the defendant, Breeanna Renee Zinn, not guilty. However, on the charge of disorderly conduct, the jury finds the defendant, Breeanna Renee Zinn, guilty. The jury further recommends restitution of $5,000 for medical costs, which has already been satisfied by Mrs. Ashli Zinn.
Restitution noted and satisfied. Mrs. Zinn, you are free to go. As to you, Ms. Ava Francesca Zinn, or should I say Ms. Neves, this court formally acknowledges your status as physically disabled under both state and federal law. Waterloo Gardens Apartments is hereby ordered to strike the June 2nd housekeeping violation and to provide Ms. Zinn with all reasonable accommodations forthwith. And let the record also reflect Ava Francesca Zinn, after taking the Elements of Law course at Purdue Fort Wayne in spring 2025, knows her housing jargon as much as her son-in-law, Martin Becker. Court is adjourned. Good luck to you all, especially to those who fight systems bigger than themselves.
3 hours later.
So easy, all the loving you gave me, the feelings we shared. And I still can remember how your touch was so tender. It told me you cared. We had a once in a lifetime, but I just couldn't see it until it was gone. Second once in a lifetime, maybe too much to ask, but I swear from now on, if ever you're in my arms again, this time I'll love you much better. If ever you're in my arms again, this time I'll hold you forever. This time will never end. Now I'm seeing clearly how I still need you near me. I still love you so. There's something between us that won't ever leave us. There's no letting go. In a lifetime, but I just didn't know it till my life fell apart. A second once in a lifetime isn't too much to ask, 'cause I swear from the heart, baby, you're in my arms again. This time I'll love you much better. If baby, you're in my arms again. This time I'll hold you forever. This time will never end. Never end. The best of